Hi, my name is Ben Singer. I work in what used to be innovation and is now a combination of DH&A and HCS pieces and parts. Organization to be announced later. And I've worked here about 3 years. I've come to many of these lunches, and I never thought of being one, but now here I am. Here's my friend Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Martins. I am part of the STARS organization for strategy and innovation over there, formerly part of the innovation team. And we are going to talk to you today about experimental inventing. This is a session that Ben and I did a few weeks ago with the STARS team down in New Orleans, and so we're going to walk you through the workshop that we did with them.
Okay, we're going to just do a quick warm-up. So put your lunch down for a minute, stand up, and find a partner. Everybody needs a partner. We will not run alone. Everyone has to have a partner.
Okay, great. So over here.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little thing called 1, 2, 3. Super easy. And Ben and I are going to show it to you.
Okay.
So
are you partnerless? All right. You got it. Okay, good. Okay. So this is how it works. This is how it starts. We're going to count to 3. Alternate. Ready? 1,
2,
3.
1,
2,
3.
Okay. You skip, right? You try it.
Okay. 2 is now a stomp. So it's going to look a little like this. Ready? All right, ready? 3. 3.
3.
Got it?
All right,
go for it. So I'll start. Hey.
Yeah.
You gotta add some voice to it too. All right. Go ahead. And then also there's this thing called Elmo that we may use. It's called Enough, Let's Move On. Sometimes if you guys have questions, we may need to just stop. We can always talk about it later, and I may Elmo you.
So experimental inventing started the beginning of this year and was really designed to help bring a set of training and coaching experiences to people broadly across the whole enterprise to help them sort of learn how to more successfully experiment and learn in the process of doing what they do. I know as an organization that DEC does this very naturally and inherently in what they do, but elsewhere it is not as much so. So this is a 3-day training for our project teams, and this is the 45-minute nugget pulled out of the middle of that. It's not all of it, it's just a tiny piece, a few of the mindsets and a method that's kind of core at the beginning of the work.
And the reason we think it's important to share is because hopefully some of this language will become more common across the enterprise, and so if somebody says something, maybe you'll know what they're talking about.
Yeah, about 180 of your patriots here have been through this, from all walks of humanity. Okay, so this is your lucky day. Boom, I just gave you all $1 million. But don't get too excited because I'm going to take it away in a minute.
Right at Black Friday too.
Huh?
Like you give them $1 million and they can't spend it. It's a holiday shop.
You can't spend it.
Yeah.
Can't spend it anymore. Okay, so this is the bet. Click. We're going to play a little game called Who You're Going to Invest in. So Company A or Company X. These are two companies that decided to get into. The other thing you have to remember is that this is approximately the 80s now. So internet, 90s. 90s. Internet 1.0, like way back at the beginning. And there's two companies that are trying to decide whether they should get into the online, basically grocery delivery order business. So the first business runs out and is basically a startup. They get a lot of money. They get a CEO who's got some internet success already, and they put him on the ground. And they start to find people who can help them build infrastructure. The other company is a 100-year-old grocery store, chain of grocery stores. They don't really have any internet experience at all, or any high-flying internet kind of people on board, and they don't really have a lot of investment. So if you had to bet which one of these guys you were going to put your $1 million on, who would vote for Company X? Hands in the air. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Who would vote for Company Y? Okay, Company Xers, you're broke. This is Webvan. They were started by the guy who ran Borders Books, whose name I forget. They spent about $1 billion on warehouses right out of the gate. They put a warehouse in every city that had a national and NFL team. And they just started to run. And they made a lot of assumptions about how groceries were going to win. But one of the things they found out is that books and lettuce don't have the same shelf life. They had other problems, but that was one of them. Their business model was super tight. Tesco, on the other hand, is the largest grocery distributor in the UK. They have grown to be the largest online grocery distributor anywhere, including against Amazon. But they knew right away they had some blind spots. And so they started to do some really interesting things, like take their grocery receipts at the end of the day and see how fast they could fulfill them. And they learned some interesting things, like if they had people shop just in an aisle versus the whole store, they could fulfill orders much faster. So they ran a lot of experiments and they became very good at this, and they continue to be excellent.
And so this really represents the difference between somebody that's got a knower mindset, I think I know a lot of things, I can tell you what to do, I can make magic happen, versus a learner mindset, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to learn more about it. And so what we want to talk to you about is trying to get more folks.
Not just people, it's the organization. The organization as a knower organization versus a learning organization.
And Humana has generally been a knower organization, and we've had that luxury, right, in the health insurance space. As we get into the healthcare space and trying to become a company that we talk about, this is where being a learner really matters, because I don't think anyone has the right answers, and that's why we're trying so many different things.
So the first mindset we talk about is curiosity. So this is also part of our values in the mood elevator. Right? Curiosity is the middle. But we actually think it's a core value. Always basically questioning why we know things, why they are the way they are, and being driven to find the answer. So what do we know? How do we know it? And then sort of asking, are we sure? It's the beginning usually of reasonable innovation work. It's not, our problems are often perpetual, they go on and on. But the way we go about solving these problems is often worth some exploration. So this is the beginning of being a learning organization. Just be curious.
And and that brings us to creativity. So how many people in the room would consider themselves creative? I hope you all are here. Like, you all get to raise your hands, right? But if we think in general, what types of people are creative? Who? Artists? Who else?
Coders.
Huh?
Coders.
Coders? Yeah? Any other ideas? Children? All right, we're going to go with kids, because that's my next slide. So, kids are creative, right? I mean, and some of the reasons that we would say a kid is creative is because they're playful, they're unguarded, right? They're not really afraid of being wrong most of the time. Imaginative, they're ready to try things out, and they tend to be honest and trusting and not super critical. How does that compare to adults?
They're guarded, not
But we have some good characteristics, right?
We do. We have good characteristics too, right? And that's why kids aren't in charge of everything. But they think they are. They're rational, they tend to be responsible, plan, all these sorts of things. And that's great, right? But there's an opportunity for us to be a little bit more like kids once in a while, so that we can be better about being curious and about thinking about new things and trying new things out. And kids are great problem solvers. And really, it's because there's two different mindsets that are applied here. So children tend to be more expansive. They're thinking of the possibilities and all the options, where adults tend to be more reductive. We can tell you all the reasons something is going to fail, right? And I think we do that all the time at work, because that's what we're really good at. And so what we are advocating for here is really trying to hone in on the expansive mindset once in a while, so that we can really start to think about more options, think outside of the box, and be more innovative in our approach. What we're not advocating for is being expansive all the time. We will never get anything done if that's the case, right? We'll never be able to actually implement things. But if we could use that expansive mindset maybe 10% of the time and be really intentional about how we use that, then there's a big opportunity for us to get further faster in the long run.
So in an organization like this one, where an expansive mindset is used a lot, there's a large swaths of the enterprise where it is not used very often. And essentially what we're trying to do is reconnect people to the belief that they actually still have this capacity within them. You all do. And it's just really trying to bring people some pragmatic tools to help them access an expansive mindset when they need it, and to point to those moments when it actually will matter. And to get them to balance it a little bit. We're not even trying to get to 50-50. 10% of the time. Like, let's try and open our minds a little bit and see if this idea can have a life.
Yeah, and I would add that I think probably for a lot of folks in the room, you're probably brought into meetings because you are the expansive mindset, right? You're able to think outside the box and be more creative and help people kind of push those barriers. And that's great. And I think that there's a big opportunity moving forward for you to continue to play that role. So we're just going to help advocate that around the business.
Okay, so now we want to talk about how easy it is to kill ideas. So pretty much this is, no because. Like, hey, I got a really great idea for this. There's a lot of other ways you can kill ideas. There's like, yes, but, let's do it my way. Also very, very popular. But really, to get people back into an expansive mindset, we really want them to embrace this idea of yes and. If you came to see Busy when she talked about kind of her philosophy of spontaneous stuff, it was all, she very generously embraced yes and. Of course, you can use yes and mean yes or. So like yes, and let's do it my way. So that's still very passive aggressive, but that's not really what we're talking about. So the thing we're going to try and do now is we're going to try and do a little exercise. To try and demonstrate how easy it is to kill an idea. So I'm going to pitch an idea for an associate engagement idea to Karen, and she's just going to kill the idea. And then we're going to have you try that also. So you can go back to your pairs where you were talking to people just a minute ago.
So finish chewing while we do this.
There's some chewing. Yep, that's fine. That can help kill the idea.
Okay.
Just keep chewing. All right, so here we go. So Karen.
Yes,
I have a really good idea for an associate engagement thing.
Ooh, what is it?
Well, I thought we would take all of the people in innovation and we would go and like collaborate with Habitat for Humanity and build a house.
Yeah, it's super cold outside. That sounds frigid and awful.
Yeah, long underwear.
Or maybe we could just get together and drink in a bar.
Have some mittens.
Or we could draw pictures.
That's not as good for associate engagement. Like, I think we should get out and use dangerous chemicals.
No, because I think that we might have some casualties, and that's not going to be good for all the work that needs to be done.
Okay.
Okay.
So you see how easy that is? It's pretty easy. You just keep saying no, no matter what somebody offers you. Okay. So what I want you to do now is get together in a group and choose pairs. You can use the same pair that you were like stomping and wiggling with, or you can find somebody new. And one person is going to pitch an idea for associate engagement idea, and the other one is just going to say no.
All right, go.
Try it. How was it to be a killer? Awesome. Usually get both answers. People are like, so easy, it's awesome. And then some people are like, hey, kill the guy. Like one or the other.
And how did it feel to have your ideas killed?
Well, they killed me. How was that? Was it pretty stupid?
It was short. You deserved it.
Yeah. So very low commitment. You didn't care.
I knew it was bad going in.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about this exercise is even though you know it's dead going in, I don't know, even for me, I get the reaction in my body like,
I still have guilt from my fear killing that I did like a month ago. Because I was like, oh, that was worth it. I didn't mean to do that.
all right, so now, not surprising, we are going to try expansive thinking and to do the opposite. Okay. So, yes and. So we call this greenhousing. Greenhousing is represented by elephants, and rather than making you guess, I'll just tell you why. Elephants are the mammal that care for their young longest besides humans. So I think 8 or 9 years, and humans are like 30. But the idea of greenhousing is that it's about positively building on each other's ideas in order to grow them to a stage where they're strong enough to be judged. Which I think if you work around any creative, passionate group of people, is a relatively normal thing to do. But as you step away from these magical places in this organization, it becomes very rare. And so this is the mindset we bring people in to try to help them understand what we want them to do. So now we're going to demonstrate very quickly and easily how greenhousing can work. And to do that, we use this idea called the sun. It's relatively straightforward. I'm going to stand over here so the sun isn't in my eyes. That just happened.
I caught it too.
Suspend judgment, even on my humor. Try to understand the person you're talking to, and then nurture their thinking. Relatively straightforward. All right, so let us demonstrate that. Ready? Hey, Karen.
Hey, Ben.
I have an idea for an associate engagement.
Really? What is it?
Seems familiar at this point, right? So I think we should get a group of people in innovation to go work with Habitat for Humanity and build a house.
Okay, why do you think that would be good?
I think it's outdoors, it gets people out of the office, and it gives people a really tangible result.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, you go and you bang nails or paint or do whatever you're doing. At the end of the day, there's a thing you can see like, yay, we made progress.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I love it when I work on something and then, you drive by that house and you say, oh, I helped build that roof, or I did something, and there's really kind of that you can hold on to the memories of doing it, but then also you feel like you actually accomplished something at the end. So, great. Maybe there's other things that we could do that would help do that. I know the weather's been kind of crazy too, so if it's snowing or something like that, maybe we could think about putting together boxes of food for the elderly or something where we can see that stack of boxes and know that it's actually going to go out and go to someone's home and really help them out.
Yeah, I could see doing something indoors, maybe.
Yeah.
This week.
This week. Yeah. Okay, so you get the point. It's about really trying to understand why someone has come up with the idea, and then you can build on it, right? You can still tell them it's a terrible idea because it's freezing, but at least maybe you guys are all going with the same spirit. So go ahead, get in your groups and try being yes and people rather than no.
How was that different for you guys? Were you the pitcher the last time?
Yes, and I used the same stupid idea, but it was a lot less stupid this time.
How about that? Anybody else? Okay, how about the, oh, yeah?
I actually came up with a new idea, like thinking through it, I came up with a new idea that was actually demonstrably better. And she was affirming of that, so.
All right, there you go. So for people who are being supportive, how was that compared to killing an idea? More conversational? More effort? It does require more effort.
More engaging. More engaging.
More engaging.
More engaging, yeah.
Yeah, and so, this is something that when we presented this out to other leaders around Humana, it really seems to have resonated. I think we are so quick to assume why someone presents an idea, everything about it, and then kill it or figure out all the reasons that it can't work, that we kind of forget to stop and really understand what it is that someone's proposing and why they're proposing it. Because, like I said earlier, it can be a terrible idea in your head, but generally the why, there's some really good reasons behind it, and that's really easy to build on. That becomes your design criteria for whatever it is you're going to do later on, and that's something that everybody can mutually agree on. And so I think that's a thing that we in this room can really try to evangelize and do, just through our actions, and hopefully start to have it spill over into other folks that we work with.
So signaling is a relatively simple idea. It just says that if we're going to be expansive in a conversation, or if we're going to be kind of productive and analytic, we just declare that in some way. We can either say it verbally, like when we all get together in a meeting, like just for now, let's try and be expansive about this. And as we sort of all mutually come to understand what this is as a concept, it's much easier to sort of hold that space open in the meeting. So that's language. I think in Google, if people put a plus in the invite for a meeting, it's assumed that it's an expansive meeting. You're not coming in there to tear something apart, you're coming in to build it up. The other thing people use is they use props. At Miller Coors, I guess, they use yellow cards and red cards like in soccer. And if it's an expansive meeting and you slip into being analytic, they hold up a yellow card. And if you mess it up again, they hold up the red card, you're gone. But I think in the history of doing that, no one's ever been thrown out of a meeting. People are like, I'm sorry, okay. And they just go back to being expansive, and it works fine. The other thing that people do is they use environmental cues. They put you know, the idea is that they want expansive, you know, feedback on one wall and the analytics stuff on another. There's a place where they painted the door of the meeting room green. It's for greenhousing. That's what they want to do when they get in the room. So you can set aside a place as a way to communicate the kinds of interactions you want to have. So signaling is an important piece. People won't intuit the kinds of conversations that you want to have. It's up to you to say. So that's, you know, yes, expansive thinking is really important, but it's important, you know, it's sort of incumbent upon all of us to say this is a moment when that's the kind of interactions we need to have. Because they're, you know, those moments happen. So it's empowering for doing that. The energizer is a little bit kind of a signal in of itself also. It kind of brings everybody together as a group of people, like we're now all bonded, we've been through this awkward and weird thing together. Sort of raises the energy in the room, but it signals that something is going to be a little bit different about this. It's not just going to be like your standard lecture where I'm going to show you a bunch of charts and graphs.
Like you don't wiggle and then kill things. You wiggle and you ideate.
Yeah.
Is the Energizer a verbal cue or
Well, like what we did when we kicked off, right? So kind of an icebreaker, energizer, that can help set the tone. It also kind of helps people stop whatever they were doing previously, engage with what you want to talk about. Great, and so we've talked about some of these mindsets and behaviors that are important to really try to push the envelope and think about things in a more innovative way. And most of that is really in service of trying to solve human problems versus Humana problems or business problems. And so, you know, if we think about the way that Humana typically operates and probably the types of challenges that you're given every day, we're talking about things in terms of problems to Humana, right? And I would venture to guess that most problems to Humana are absolutely not problems to humans, right? Within the STARS organization, we really want people to get colonoscopies. Most people really don't want to get a colonoscopy. There's almost like an inverse, right? And so what we really need to do is be able to work to reframe our Humana problems, which are often focused on metrics and money and all of those things, into the human problem. Why does a person need to do this? What's the benefit to them, and what's the problem we're trying to solve for that person, so that we can ultimately get the action we need from a business perspective.
So this is the core of human-centeredness, right? It's not complicated. It's just looking for the intersection in the Venn diagram between the things that are meaningful to us as a business, money, people, and the things that are meaningful for our members, for our providers, or our care managers, or whoever it is. And so to finding out what's kind of like in the middle, because our members don't engage with stuff if it's not really we can offer to them, but they, you know, can't pay them enough to ignore it.
So if we think about common Humana problems, what's a Humana problem that y'all are facing? Oh? Nothing? All right, we'll go with colonoscopies over lunch. Or did you have something?
I was just going to say, framing pharmacist work days to get more consults in.
Okay, so pharmacists getting consults, Humana pharmacists talking to more members. And why do we want Humana pharmacists to talk to members?
Because I think it has to do with like business and money.
Right.
It's just the concern is are we spending the right like quality time with our members and making them feel valued in every consultation. And that's what I'm curious about. But sometimes like we hear them and they're like, oh, we have to get through this consult, and like they're packed like back to back to back to back. And it must be exhausting for the pharmacists as
Right.
well.
So you bring up a really good point. Sometimes the human problem isn't a member problem, it can be an associate problem too, right? And ultimately the benefit's probably going to hopefully be for the member. But sometimes we need to solve those human problems for associates. So if we think about a Humana problem might be, we need our pharmacists to be as efficient as possible when talking to our members, right? That lag time is costing us money. That's a Humana problem, right? The human problem maybe our pharmacists need to have efficient conversations with members, but they also need to make sure that they can connect with people and do the best job possible and communicate all the information that that member needs to have in order to actually have some sort of impact on their health, right? And thinking about it that way and being able to have a succinct conversation, but it's really about having a conversation that can impact health for our members. If we can start from there, then there's a lot of ways that we can solve that problem. And so that's what we're advocating.
So, the key driver inside of this training has always been to start with a hypothesis about what the human problem is. Often we're very, very clear about what the human problem is. We have a lot of numbers, we have a lot of claims data, we have a lot of inferential, sort of circumstantial evidence. Most of our problems have been around, and we have a lot of people who worked here a long time, and we know a lot. When we get around to what the human problem is, what we're solving for the member themselves, it can be a little sketchier. We know less. Sometimes we've done a lot of, ethnographic or in-context research, but not always. And so it tends to be a hypothesis. And so what we ask, as we get people to define what the human problem is for people, is to think about it like this. Who is it? Who's the target? It can't be everybody. It should be like, it's our congestive heart failure patients, or it's, people in need of a med bracket, or whatever it is. And then what their need is, and when and where. So the occasion, when is this thing coming up? What's their ambition? What are they trying to do, or what's the problem? And we try to get people to actually articulate these hypotheses, write it down. A set of things that are sort of critical assumptions inside of this hypothesis.
So if we think, going back to that pharmacist issue, we could say that Humana pharmacists who call members need to be able to connect with those members to have the right conversations to drive behaviors. And in instances where there's a medication reconciliation issue. Let's say that's right. But that's a hypothesis, right? And so the thing about whatever hypothesis is that we make, there's typically a lot of assumptions that are put into it, right? So thinking about these pharmacists who are on the phone with their members, there's an assumption that pharmacists need to talk to members on the phone, right? There may be other ways that we can engage our members. There's an assumption that there should be time allowed. Maybe the members don't want to spend any time on the phone with us. Maybe they want a very short conversation and 5 minutes is the appropriate amount of time. Maybe there's an assumption that these pharmacists can actually create change by having a conversation to begin with, right? So there's a lot of assumptions that are built into whatever hypothesis we have around a human problem. And those are things that are really critical for us to have conversations about within the business, right? So if we have a line that's saying, this is the problem we want to solve, what we really need to do next is think about what are the assumptions that are built into that. And I think that's really especially important at Humana, because at Humana we've got a lot of folks who have been working in this business for a really long time. And there are a lot of things that they just know to be true. But when you start to poke at it, you see that it's not always true, right? That there's some certain data point somebody's been holding on to, or there's some assumption about our members. Medicare members never use the internet, or we can't get anybody to log into something, or whatever it is, right? In a lot of cases it might be a valid concern, but some cases it isn't. And so that's where we need to be able to have some conversations about the assumptions that are built into these problems, and then start to test and learn around those assumptions, and make sure that we're pointing in the right direction.
So the thing we do in the process is we get people to write down the assumptions associated with the human problem they're working on sticky notes. And we jam them in this 2x2, which is relatively self-evident when you sort of look at it. So the critical assumptions you're making are the ones that are most important. If it's not true, everything else falls apart. These are less critical. And then you can work your way from things that we know, like, yes, this is probably absolutely true as an assumption, to things we have no idea about. So the things that we are very uncertain about and are very critical basically become the prioritized things to start experimenting about. And this is where we help people sort of frame what they're going to do and frame what the test and learn is. Why are we learning? What are we testing? And this is kind of how we drive the understanding of how to do this, more broadly. It's very simple to do. Sometimes you end up with everything in the upper right-hand corner, and then you have to say, okay, wait a second. Then you sort them out. So you take the very farthest right, we take a bunch of them off the table and we resort them out. If there's too many in the upper right. It's not about being right, it's just about finding the first place to start. So that's kind of the process that we've got.
So if we think about the pharmacists who are pressed for time in order to talk to members, maybe one of the most critical assumptions is that our members, that time is required to achieve results, right? That a pharmacist needs to have a sufficient amount of time to talk with the member in order to achieve some sort of outcome. And we may say that that's the most critical assumption that's built into that. I'm probably wrong, but I don't have a whiteboard, so I'm just going to go with it. So what you want to do is then start to think about how to address that assumption and that thing that is most critical, and do some experimentation around it. And I'm saying experimentation really intentionally. Humana does a lot of pilots. We do a lot of huge scale things. We think that we are testing something small, and it suddenly incorporates 100,000 members, and there are outcomes that are required, right? There are a lot of stage gates, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that are put into these pilots, and you have one shot to do it, typically, right? If this pilot fails, the whole thing is gone. So there's not a lot of motivation to fail, because it's going to kill whatever you're working on, and people have a lot of equity in it. It also tends to be really resource heavy and metrics driven, which is all a really good thing when you're ready for it. But what I would venture to say is that Humana often goes too quickly into a pilot, right? We think it's small scale because it's 10,000 people, and it's not 10 million people. But 10,000 people is still a lot, and we might be able to learn quite a few things by just talking to 10 people. And so when you start to think about an experiment where you want to test and learn and experiment around maybe some of these hypotheses or these assumptions that you've created, that's where you can go in and you can just do a really quick, scrappy, but not crappy, type of experiment to learn around one critical feature. So it's something that you want to be iterative about. You want to test just one thing. We're not going to solve probably most of the problem that you have in this experiment, but you are going to prove out what that assumption and that one little thing is so that you can move on, you can put that thing to bed, and you can keep working on your problem. You're going to be iterative, so if you fail, you're still learning, right? If this thing is, if my assumption that people need time to talk to the members, that pharmacists require a sufficient amount of time to talk to the members is wrong, that's fine. I can work with that answer, right? If I'm right, that's fine. I can work with that answer too. It becomes something that you can start to build around. But it should be something that's resource light. I should be able to go and listen to some calls with pharmacists, maybe over the course of a couple of days, understand what that's like, maybe have a couple conversations with members to understand what it's like for them, and I should be able to get some sort of directional information so that we can move on. I'm never going to be statistically significant with this, and that's completely okay. It's just enough for us to keep moving, so that ultimately when we get to a point of a pilot, we're ready, and we're a lot smarter about how we do it.
So this is kind of the pattern I think that we've dominantly seen, which is that as a knowing organization, we start from a business challenge, and we jump to a solution, and we pilot it. And the size of the pilot is usually around the confidence we have. So for things that we really are sure about, we'll go pretty much full on. For things that we're less certain about, we'll try something small, but it's still basically a pilot. And what we're advocating for is kind of an intermediate step, where there's some application for a human problem, and we start to go into a learning mode about that. And when we bring solutions to it, it's not always about whether the solution is right or not. It's about how can we use the offer of a solution to understand the problem better. Can we learn more about a member by seeing whether they're interested in, I don't know, more time on the phone with a pharmacist, or a service to get them some exercise if they have congestive heart failure, or a connected scale, or whatever it is. And how we talk about that offer change their interest. So it's generally more of the exploration in the middle that we see as valuable.
And I think one thing that's important to note is that there's a lot of Humana problems that exist. But if you take one Humana problem, there will be maybe multiple human problems that are associated with it, right? So if we go back to the colonoscopy example, Humana wants people to have a colonoscopy because it closes stars gaps, which can drive revenue for the business, right? From a human problem, there may be multiple reasons that people don't want to have a colonoscopy or aren't getting it. They may not know that they need it. They might not understand that they may be afraid of the costs that are associated with it. They may really want it, but they have to have someone drive them there, and they can't figure out transportation. There's a lot of things that are the human problems that build up into that Humana problem. And it's important to parse it out. You're not going to have a one-for-one. And the solutions that you create should be addressing those human problems, not the Humana problems. If Humana comes up with one solution to get people to have colonoscopies, it's probably going to be the wrong solution for everybody. If we can come up with multiple solutions for human problems, like we need people to have transportation services who are having colonoscopies, that's something that's manageable and something we can do, and we can iterate around that. So it's about kind of parsing those things out and then trying to create a more comprehensive set of solutions.
Beat now into that.
That's it.
So that's it. Do you guys have a question? Yes.
I have a question, like, kind of like when you first start one of these workshops, do you have to deal with, like, structural hierarchy? Like, how do you get people to work, like, at a flat level? Or is that an issue that you run across? Like, if your boss is in the room with you, or you,
Yeah.
like, how do you make sure that...
So we did something, because this workshop's been done a few times at Humana now, and the last one was with the STARS and Hickory organization. And what we did is we did a half-day session with leaders, and so they went through and kind of got a taste. And then we did a 2.5-day session with a lot of their direct reports and some other key people on their teams. But then we brought the leaders back in at the end to see the output and understand kind of what the value was. And that seemed to work really well because we got the right layers of people in the room, but it still kind of gave everybody a chance to ideate and do what they needed to do during the sessions. So I think there's a few ways we can tackle it. But there definitely is a top-down push on this, which I think is really good, because we've been the bottom-up people for a while, but it's kind of about trying to figure out how to meet in the middle.
Yeah, it was designed not to address the problem you're talking about, but to give leaders the set of complementary skills to the project level people's skills, so that there's somebody pulling for a learning result, not just pushing for one, and somebody holding you to that in addition to the operational metrics that we have to hit anyway. And so we built a complementary training and coaching for leaders, so that their project teams, as they got kicked off, people basically, the thing we're trying to do effectively is create behavior change. It doesn't matter if we train everybody if everybody goes back to work and does things exactly the way they need to be doing. So the pull and the push seem to be really good. Like, if we can get a bunch of project people to have the right headset, go after the problem in the right way, we can get their leadership to basically support them to do that. That was why it was designed that way.
And some of the conversations we've had recently as an output of that activity is, there's stuff that's built into this training, we talked about some of it today, that's more about facilitation and the way you behave. So, doing the assumptionator or listing out assumptions or signaling that the meeting's going to be expansive. And then there's other things where it's about being creative and problem solving. And those could be two different people, and often at Humana it is. So you may have a project manager who can really be on point to do some of this facilitation, right? If they have that skill set and they know about those things, they can help drive it from that perspective. And then you can have other people on teams who are really starting to kind of apply the solutioning and creativity behind it. So I think there's more we can do there too.
Yes.
Are you affiliated with the Enterprise Innovation Champions Council?
Yep. That's also I participate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of similarities there, so I just wanted.
Yeah. So the Innovation Champion Council started about the same time that innovation programming did. And it was designed to just get its arms around the 100 and, some odd, like test and learns that were going on across the organization broadly. The idea was that if we could understand what is in that big pile of stuff, we could be a little bit more intentional about it. We could treat it as a portfolio. We could think about it as like things with, very risky and far out, and some things closer. But one of the things we found is that there's some systemic barriers to just testing things. It's very hard to test things. There's a lot of necessary regulations that prevent us from doing things that are illegal or wrong, or leading our members in ways that we shouldn't. and against the rules of CMS. And so testing things with people takes a while. You have to be very deliberate. You have to find your way through the woods on that. So what we did is we set up basically ways for people to test a little better, and we follow our training with coaching. We ran this training for the Innovation Council as a way to support their.
How important is it, you think, for a collective department to become comfortable with the greenhouse type activities? A department that might be analytically based or kind of service focused, something that they're not used to that type of thing. You found yourself in situations where you're trying to get that out of a certain type of team or certain team culture and not getting that, or is it okay if you can't be so broad and you have this certain functional core teams that move the department in that kind of thing? Is that makes sense?
So in my head, the division is between, is this something we should just go do? Or is this something that we really need to think about and learn about before we just invest a bunch of money? Are we in some ways taking a pot shot at something? Or do we actually know, yeah, if we change this thing, it becomes more efficient for everybody and we save a bunch of money? If it's something we should just do it. If it's something we don't understand, then we have to have the resources and knowledge amongst ourselves to be a learning organization. We fall back on these methodologies and go back. I haven't seen anybody fail outright at this. I've seen people be pretty resistant for a day, the first day of training, and like, I don't know.
Well, I think it's about maintaining, right? So, within the Hickory organization, we have a lot of really analytical people, and while that exercise of saying yes and might have felt fine and stupid to most of you in this room, for them it felt really different, and it really resonated for several people, right? And so I think that kind of doing some of this practice can have an impact. But now it's up to the organization, it's up to the leaders, and it's up to everybody else to keep it going, right? And to have advocates that are just exemplary, like just doing the behaviors, right? And so I don't think we should write off the analytics people. I think everybody's open to it, but it's just about building the muscle memory.
Yeah. How do you define failure? There's got to be a point where you say, okay, our lander didn't land on Mars, we should blow the bridge up and start over again. There's a certain
Well, that's a
place where you're
pilot.
like,
Yeah.
let's start over or let's start something else.
Yeah.
Again, I think if what you're setting out to do is learn something about a relatively immutable problem that we go after all the time. Our members are old, they're multiply chronic, they have numerous barriers, they have a lot of they're polypharmacy. These things are not changing. These are conditions that are eternal in some ways. And so the more we understand about them, the better. I think there's almost always the opportunity to shape a concept, to shape an idea, to try a different path. And all the learning that we've accumulated thus far still serves us. It's generally still true about people. People don't change that fast. And so, but there is, you definitely come to a point where you feel like we've taken this concept as far as we can get it to go. It's not going to return money for us. We can't get it to work within the constraints of our business context, within the constraints of our market, within whatever it is. We have to put it down and move on to something else. I think we try to kill things, in innovation we try to kill about 10 things for every one thing we look at.
But what Humana probably could be doing better to try to avoid this cycle of this continuous test and learn, and we don't get anywhere, or continuous experimentation, is just better information sharing. Because we're all working on the same problems, right? There's people across the company that are working on diabetes and engaging diabetics. We're not very good at sharing that information and all the knowledge. So I'm going to fail here, and I might fail on the same problem that somebody else or same solution somebody has in the other part of the organization. And what we need to do is work on sharing that across better too.
So there you go. Does that answer your question? We have 1 minute.
This mindset will hopefully help you understand failure before you get to the bridge building, right? So the idea that you don't need a bridge in this scenario, you need something else. The idea of understanding that human problem, understanding that that human problem will result in a couple of other different scenarios or solutions. So like instead of getting to the bridge, you built the bridge, now you gotta go up the bridge. This mindset's helping you, well, before you get to that, you already have tested a couple of different solutions.
To make a lead on the bridge.
Yeah.
Or make a vote.